Okay. Hello, David here with the newest episode of Film Student School. I am your host, David Ortega. Snick Saber's already in the building. How's it going? Welcome. Thank you so much. My day was actually much better than it has been the past couple of days. Thank you so much for asking, Snicks. Sorry that the little introductory period there of this first episode went a little longer there for any potential Twitch viewers, but I just was having trouble tying the tie. I'm just gonna be completely honest. I had trouble with this tie. I normally don't have that kind of issue, but I guess today I just kind of left it a little bit on the back burner, and then finally I was like, oh yeah, I didn't put a. Damn, Snicks, what's going on? Why do you keep saying that every day's worse? Like, I think we really need to work on this. That's the thing, is like, today was worse than yesterday, and then the next day is gonna be worse than that. If I'm sorry, but yeah, it sucks, but we gotta at least try on some things. Because you always say that a day's bad and a day's worse, and it's worse and it's worse. It's like, Snicks, I'm sorry, but I really hope that this is not girl related. This is not, I don't know. I just hope it gets better tomorrow. Okay, I hope so too, man. I hope so too. Because you've been saying for a while now that every day's bad, and I'm kind of worried now for you, man. You've been saying almost every time that you're in the chat that today was bad, today was not good. Honestly, it's like, okay, so when is it good? Like, we're gonna have to change something. You know what I mean? Something's gotta change. I'm trying to make efforts to make things change, and thankfully, today was a better day for it. Today was actually one of the finer days of the past 3 days. Work was actually tolerable. Went a little smoother. It wasn't slow. It was just moderately paced. So everything went well on the work front. But anyways, this is Film Student School. You know how it is. Every Thursday night at 7:30, 8 o'clock-ish time is when I decide to sit down here on the good old Twitch channel and kick back and chat about things that are relatable for a film student. Because we always wonder how things kind of happen within the construct of a film school for anybody who is wanting or aspiring to become a filmmaker, whether they be in the directing department, producing, writing, etc. And this is more so of a podcast style kind of show that I do almost every week now for the past 6 weeks, in which I talk about different topics that center around the idea of going to film school and what's it like to, what the experience is really like from a film student's perspective. Now, of course, right now is a very unique time, since we are in a time of quarantine, even though the country as a whole is now deciding that the quarantine is just not real, as demonstrated by various businesses and things out there. But I still am of the mindset that it is very much in fact still an ongoing thing. I think that we still need to have to kind of keep ourselves occupied or keep ourselves conscious of knowing that, we still have to be careful with being sanitary, with being safe, with being clean, things like that. And one of those things that, holds us up to a high standard is knowing when to stay home and when to just quarantine ourselves and making sure that we're not just gallivanting around when we don't need to. And I think that a good use of that time while we're staying in home is watching movies. So today's episode is entitled Your Homework for Today, and I wanted to center this episode around the topic of what movies to really watch and what movies to kind of expose yourself to. And to be honest, I might just play it off the cuff and start talking about TV shows even, because I think now we're in a really great place when it comes to television, especially with streaming services. As much as I am still kind of the original mindset of watching an episode per week to see what happens next on the next episode of such and such, I still accept what streaming services are now doing for society and for the medium of television, and also the quality of television in terms of having access to it, getting more eyes on your TV show. And it's providing more jobs, it's providing more opportunities for people who, like I said, are wanting to break into the industry. So I'm very thankful for that. So that's why I might, spitball some shows here and there as far as quality is concerned. But I really am definitely going to be mostly centering around film and movies, what movies you should watch, what movies I should watch, because I'm not just going to, get on some kind of pedestal here and say, yes, I've seen every single film known to man. I'm not gonna do that, because I will be completely transparent and honest and say when I have not seen a particular film, a film that me as a not only as a movie aficionado, but also an aspiring director, should have probably watched by now. Case in point, right now, I am currently attending film school with one of still this winter quarter? No, this is the spring quarter. This is very much the spring quarter. But of course, with what we're dealing with coronavirus and all, the class had to be moved strictly towards Zoom oriented classes and conference calls and things like that. I have not stepped foot on my campus for now about a good 2, almost 3 months. And in that time, of course, I do a class every week, but of course, but every time that it's done done via Zoom or some kind of video conference with the website, the school website, etc., etc. And one of the classes that I'm taking is one centered around Francis Ford Coppola. Coppola. It's Coppola. I always butcher his last name for some reason. I always feel like I'm pronouncing it wrong, but I digress. I always knew about him as a director. I always knew the films that he's made, but I would always raise my eyebrows when I told folks that up until taking this class, I had never seen The Godfather. And I know that this is one of the seminal films to watch ever. And I have never seen it up until this class. I can finally say now that I've seen Godfather and Godfather Part 2 and Apocalypse Now. Finally, for the first time, thanks to this class. We have yet to get to Part 3, or Dracula, which a lot of people I've heard say they really like that movie because it's a very faithful adaptation of the original Dracula book. So that's going to be an interesting view. But you'd be surprised as to like how many movies I have yet to watch, and I have to find room in my life, in my free time, to just look at these movies and be like, okay, I'm finally going to sit down and properly watch from beginning to end these films. For a long time, I had not seen Pulp Fiction. I mean, I corrected this about 2-3 years ago, but prior to that, I would again raise some eyebrows and have people question me as to whether or not I should really be a director by telling them that I had not seen Pulp Fiction. At least Day was good. I've seen the Sonic movie 4 times already. How did you see the Sonic movie 4 times? Spoiler alert, but I'm sorry, we're not gonna see the. We're not gonna exactly be talking about films like the Sonic movie. But at the same time, at least I'm glad to know that you've been watching some movies as of late. Period, Snicks. I also saw my copy of the Sonic movie, and it came with a comic book. Yeah, I saw. I saw at work today. It was up on the shelf, and it has a little sticker saying "free comic book" inside. I'm like, all right. It's probably like one of those quick 5-page reads. You should watch the Sonic movie. Yeah, I mean, I heard it's good. I heard it's actually not that bad. So that's one that I kind of have to get out of my system, despite already knowing what the end credit scene is. So, because some bastards online have to post that fucking thumbnail. But, anyways, I'm gonna try to keep myself clean as much as possible here. You've never seen Godfather 1 and 2. There is a third film now. The common consensus is that the third film is definitely not as good as the first two, which is weird because they still gave him the nomination for Best Picture and Director on that third film, but everybody always talks about 3 like it butchers the entire thing, and I'm like, well, then why did he get nominated for so many Oscars? But I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get there. I hate when people spoils. Yeah, I mean, and it's sad when the people who spoil it are the people that you can't really blame, but you're like, I don't know who to turn to in this situation. Case in point, last night I finally finished. I went on Twitter, and there's an actress that I follow from the TV show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it was thanks to her tweet that a little plot element that I have yet to come across in the remaining 2 episodes of the 6th season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was spoiled by her with a image that she shared via tweet, and that was only because last night was the premiere of the 7th season. I have yet to finish season 6 with 2 episodes left, but her tweet had a little spoiler image in there, and I'm like, fuck. and I had to make the difficult choice of, I didn't block her, but I just muted her. When you mute people on Twitter, meaning you don't see their tweets anymore until you unmute them, but you're still following them. Like you're still a follower for them, and I like that feature because I had to mute her. I had to mute a couple of other cast members that I follow on Twitter for that show, but because I'm not watching it in real time, they might be tweeting some things that I don't want to get spoiled. And again, it's not their fault. They could only assume that I'm caught up, but I'm not. So that was a bummer. And then I have to go into Twitter and go into the privacy settings and mute certain words. I have like a plethora of words muted on Twitter. I have The Last of Us muted. I have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. muted. I even have I guess I could take them off, but I had Final Fantasy VII muted. I can now take those off since I've already beaten the game. But yeah, anyways, going back to films. So, like I said, I can't really protest thus much and say that I've seen every single film ever imaginable. I do know that there's some films that I'm trying to, let me at least tackle the position of director and think of what films I can think of up to the top of my head. And of course, I'm going to get the usual suspects out of the way. Because as a director, or actually, you know what? As a filmmaker, the advice I always get from fellow directors, teachers who are directors, teachers who are even not even directors, actually, they might just be producers, casting directors, acting teachers, colleagues, peers, etc. One piece of advice that I've heard very routinely throughout film school, like any ways you slice it, and you're probably going to hear it in regardless of whatever film school you end up going to, is that sometimes the best teacher really are just the movies. Watch movies and then dissect them. Maybe watch them for the first time as just an average casual watcher or moviegoer, and then maybe through a second view, really dissect the film depending on which viewpoint you want to see it from. So if I'm, say, for example, I will use myself as an example. Since I want to be a director, there's certain films that I have to look and see, okay, did this movie get nominated for Best Director? Why? Was it because of a fancy shot that they were able to orchestrate? Was it because of the way that they were able to handle their ensemble cast? Which is actually an element that I didn't really take into consideration until I started to watch a bit more film in a very serious and critiquing style during my community college days, and most definitely when I started to take those first couple of quarters at my film school that I decided to go to. Because when I was a teenager, during the times where I was somewhat following the Oscars, but I wasn't super critical of the films that I would watch, I was kind of like in that weird gray area during 2003, 2004, 2005-ish, 2006-ish, a little bit, where I would see certain genre films get nominated, and I was like, okay, cool, but it would be mainly for those technical awards, and then I would see a movie that seemed very simplistic in the way that it was directed and the camera angles and things like that, and would get nominated for Best Director, and I'm like, why? I mean, and then I would watch the movie, and it was, like I said, shot very, quote-unquote, plainly and things like that. Only once I finally grew up and started to mature that I realized that, okay, maybe it's not always about what lens they used, what shot they were able to achieve through meticulous detail. It's also about just the great performances they're able to get out of an ensemble cast, not just one particular actor or actress, but rather the ability to handle sometimes very heavy subject matter and still be able to make everyone on set, both cast and crew alike, keep their morals about. They're making sure that they're not losing hope, that you're good to work with, you're keeping inspiration alive. That's ultimately what can also land you a Best Director nomination. So ultimately, yes, I would go through the IMDb pages and see if the movie got nominated for Best Director or Best Picture, Best Writing, and dissect it from those viewpoints. But then other times, even if the movie didn't get that kind of acclaim, didn't get garnered with an awful lot of Oscars or Academy Award nominations, etc., or even Golden Globe nominations, there's still some movies that are considered very, important and also very much liked by an awful lot of people. And I try to look at those films and be like, okay, why did a lot of people, like, for example, a director who has not been nominated for an Oscar whatsoever, but a lot of film critics and a lot of people who just love film, especially from the 80s, really like this director. And some of you comic book fans might know who this is. Richard Donner. Richard Donner is a director who became really successful in the 70s for bringing us the original Superman film. And, the original Superman film. An unofficial Richard Donner cut of Superman 2 before he got replaced by Richard Lester. And the Lethal Weapon films, as well as The Goonies. And again, he's never been nominated for any Oscars, not even any Golden Globes. I checked out his IMDb page. No Golden Globes, no BAFTAs, no Oscars, no nothing. And he is touted as a really good director of handling films in a genre space where they're very balanced with the humor, with the heart, and with the chemistry, most notably with the Lethal Weapon films. Say what you want about him, but Mel Gibson's chemistry with Danny Glover in those films is unrivaled. Like, I can watch those guys banter for hours trying to defuse a bomb, and even with those movies not being, again, prestigious films, not being cinematic hits that got nominated for all these Oscars, and Richard Donner himself not getting a Best Director Oscar nomination at all, I still look at those films and go, how did Richard Donner get Mel Gibson and Danny Glover to get along? And sometimes it could just be in the casting. An awful lot of directors will go on record saying that sometimes when you cast well, like 90% of the work is done. All you have to do is just shoot it. Sometimes you might not even have to tell the actors how to act a certain way because they just get it. And that's just a match made in heaven. And from that point on, it's just put the camera here, put the camera there. I want the shot here, I want the shot there, and then you're done. So, when I watch a movie like Lethal Weapon, or when I watch the Christopher Reeve Superman, I look at the way it's shot, I look at the way the cameras are positioned, and be like, okay, what worked? Even if it didn't get that Best Director Oscar. But then, of course, looking at the more prestigious level of things, why did this person get Best Director Oscar? Why did Catherine Bigelow win the Oscar for The Hurt Locker, and why did that work despite not earning the amount of money that Avatar did? And don't get me wrong, I am in the camp that The Hurt Locker is a significantly better movie than Avatar, in my personal opinion. Again, opinions are completely subjective, very different from everybody. Everyone's got one, like buttholes. And some are clean, some are dirty, and some others are, you have to see to believe. I'm using a very terrible anecdote here. For a minute, I thought you were going to say Michael Bay. Well, to be honest, Michael Bay, I mean, when he's not doing Transformers and when he's not losing his goddamn mind, Michael Bay is that high school student that is smart, but for some reason he probably grew up in a very messed up home that he just decides to rebel and get into drugs and things like that. Like, he knows how to do math, but he uses the math to know how much, drugs to sell and things like that. Like, that's what, that's the type of filmmaker I know Michael Bay is. I feel like he can properly direct a good action comedy or a good action film with substance. It's just that often he ends up choosing not to. It's almost like every time that he tries to do that, the people don't go check out the films, and he's like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to make something, really crazy and over the top and just lose my shit. I think after he did Pain and Gain, he went back to Transformers. I really, really like Pain and Gain, and a lot of critics actually did, in fact, like Pain and Gain with Mark Wahlberg and Dwayne Johnson. It was actually one of my honorable mentions, I think, of that year. But it didn't really make that much money. So guess what? He went back to the money wagon, which is, of course, Transformers, with the fifth film getting another Worst Director nomination from the Razzies. Yay. And then when he did 13 Hours, it's called 13 Hours, and then I can't remember what the subtitle was, something of Benghazi with John Krasinski, which I have not seen. That's another movie I have not seen, but I heard a lot of people say was really good. A lot of people checked it out. Got dumped in January, I believe, in theaters. Didn't get checked out that much. He went and he didn't take it to the movie theaters. He took it to Netflix, but he made a very crazy over-the-top action film, Six Underground, with Ryan Reynolds, which I heard was kind of bad. There you go. So yeah, I gotta be honest. I will give credit to Michael Bay. We're saying that when he tries, you can see that he tries. It's just often he chooses not to. Mark Wahlberg is one of my favorite actors. Yeah, he's a really good. He's a good actor. He's another one that I really want to see in more dramatic stuff. Lately he's been taking a liking to doing more of the action stuff. But when he can do drama with the right director, he can do it. With Martin Scorsese, even Peter Berg. I think his name is Peter Berg, the director who did Lone Survivor, and he also did Battleship. But he did Lone Survivor, and Lone Survivor was actually really good. And the Boston Marathon bombing movie. I can't remember the name right now, but you know which movie I'm talking about. That was also I heard a movie that I heard it was actually pretty good. Favorite Mark Wahlberg film is Ted. That's weird because I feel like Mark Wahlberg is just playing himself in that movie. But I gotta be honest, Snakes. I don't know what you said in that one comment. There's one movie I don't like, but everyone loves. Oh, okay. So you meant to see it, type an E, but you wrote 3. What movie is that? So I've already kind of divulged a little bit there into films that I have not seen, but films that I have seen. I mean, at the end of every year, I try to rack up as many as I can so that I can squeeze into my top 10. I have a 4K collection over here of various films, but I'm trying to kind of jot down the films that you absolutely need to check out. And I want to almost say I'm gonna throw one out here that's actually very accessible. You can actually unless it got taken down, you know what, screw it, let me go on YouTube real fast here and see if it's up. There's a movie that's actually on YouTube. Is it? No. Oh, wait. Or maybe it is. It is. I mean, I'm not gonna. Okay, you know what? I'm not gonna encourage checking it out. Maybe try renting it or buying it. But there is accessible ways to nab it on YouTube. But if you're a director, if you're an aspiring director like myself, there's actually a little movie, an independent film, that came out in 1999. It's called Following, and it's on YouTube. Either you could rent it, or if you do enough searching, you could probably maybe even find it and just check it out as it is. And it's a very, very short film. In fact, it almost barely constitutes as a feature film. It's an hour and 10 minutes, so it's a very, very quick watch through about this guy who decides to adopt a habit. He's a novelist, and he's a writer. I don't know if he's a novelist per se, but he's a writer. And in order to gain inspiration for characters and plot lines, he does something that is probably not the safest thing to do, which is to follow people and see what they kind of do. So every so often he picks out a person, he just follows them for a little while. And then, of course, as fate would have it, one day he just ends up following the wrong person, who then turns around and says, "You want something really interesting? Keep on following me this way, and I'll go ahead and show you." And shit starts to kind of hit the fan after a little while. Now, why am I telling you to check out this movie Following from 1999? It's a black and white film, so tolerate it, despite being shot on black and white film. I think it's like 60 millimeter film, something like that. It's shot in that square aspect ratio. Very independent. You're gonna notice some, iffy set dressing and cinematography in terms of having that low budget feel. But it's very well. It comes to show you. There's a couple of reasons, 2 particular reasons as to why I recommend this film, Following. And reason number 1 is because it's very, very low budget. It was probably made for like thousands. We're talking thousands of dollars, and yet there's really good central performances from your 2 protagonists, and you have a really, really clever plot thread told in just a short amount of time. Sometimes it comes to show that you don't need to make a very bombastic 2 or 2.5 hour film to tell a very epic story. You can even just tell it in an hour and 10 minutes. And this movie is this movie Following is a very clear representation of that. And then the second reason why I think you should check this out is because it was directed by a filmmaker at the time, 1998, 1999 or so. He was an up-and-coming filmmaker. He wasn't really going to film school at all. But he just decided to pick up the camera and say, you know what, I have this, script that I want to write. Let me, pull some money together, get some independent actors, and see if maybe I can kind of shoot this thing on film as low budget as possible and try to get it as many, eyes on it as possible. And that filmmaker is, like I said, at the time a relative unknown, but his name is, I think, Christopher Nolan. I don't know what he did afterwards, but he made a film called Following in 1998, and it's a very small film, and not a lot of people haven't really checked it out, but it's definitely a movie. I don't know how long I can keep this up for. Yes, that Christopher Nolan. He made a movie called Following in 1998. It's actually his first official feature film before he went and did Memento in 2000. And yeah, like I said, it's on YouTube. In fact, I'm going to do something here that I don't know if I've ever done before. Let me see if I could do it. I'm going to switch over to a new screen here. It's this screen right here. So I can share window capture. So you see an empty section right here, but let me see if I could do this. There we go. We can. Nice. It lives. So let me, and that looks terrible. Let me just go ahead and move it behind that. Oh yeah, that's perfect. No, that's actually perfect. All right, cool. Yep, there's YouTube. So I have the trailer. Let me go ahead and enable desktop audio here so you guys can hear it. Let me play this trailer here. Nolan fans. So this is the original trailer for this movie Following.
Your eyes drift
and yeah, from the director of Memento. Obviously they put that after he released Memento, just so that this can kind of garner some viewership. But basically this was Christopher Nolan's first official film. He had a short film before this. In fact, that short film was literally just 3 minutes. Again, you don't have to tell a great story in a lengthy amount of time. But this was the film afterwards, and it was almost pretty much done on a similar budget where, like I said, it was very low cost, shot on film, black and white, not even color. I would even go as far as to say that the audio is not even all that perfect throughout the film, because I've seen this. It's been years, but I have seen this, and I remember the audio not being terrifically great. But at least I was able to get the story across, and it interweaves ins and outs. It's told in a very non-linear manner. So this is actually one movie that I'm gonna, go ahead and pitch as saying, if you're an aspiring director, or even if you're planning on being a writer-director like I am, an auteur, so to speak, where you want to write and direct your first material. I mean, you can look at all of Tarantino's work as much as you want. His original film, Reservoir Dogs, down to his latest, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And then, of course, Christopher Nolan is one of the easy ones to kind of go to, especially with the recent. Let me go ahead and repeat it here, just real quick, just one more time. With the recent release of the second trailer for Tenet, which I have not seen, and I'm kind of nervous to see it because I sometimes want to go into a Christopher Nolan as fresh as I possibly can. Dunkirk was the only exception because it's Dunkirk, it's historical, it's not meant to be a mystery. But this one is, especially with that very first trailer almost a year ago. And yes, there's a new trailer. I'm kind of scared to want to watch it only because of spoilery reasons, but that's back into the conversation. So since Nolan is now back into the spotlight with that newest trailer, let's go ahead and throw it back here. And my first recommendation on this, one of my recommendations on this episode, is going to be Following by Christopher Nolan, his first ever feature-length film, despite barely being considered a feature-length film at an hour and 10 minutes. But definitely check it out. Like I said, if you do enough searching, I think you can actually find it on YouTube. Legit, not legitimately, but you can just, watch it. You can try renting it, but you can also just kind of watch it. If you catch my drift. So let me go ahead and mute that and jump back here into webcam only. I'll go ahead and keep my browser open just in case I want to pull up some trailers. Speaking of Tarantino, I actually just referenced Tarantino. So very tough to, I gotta be honest. I'm gonna disqualify Tarantino as films to recommend only because his he has a very small but vastly known filmography that it's like what can't I say that hasn't already been said about Tarantino when it comes to how he writes, how he directs, how he's kind of established his own universe. So but I still want to keep Tarantino in the conversation just a tiny bit, only because there's no denying that he's had an inspiration on the film industry as a whole. Like, he's here to stay, basically. Even after his 10th and self-proclaimed final film, he's still going to be talked about for decades. He's done. And, like I said, one thing that I kind of want to bring up in the conversation is that actually, I think it was either today or yesterday, or today. Let me actually pull up the headline. Let me go back to my browser here in a second. Let me pull up the headline first, just to make sure that there's no. Oh, here we go. It's right away, right here. All right. Let me switch back to that webcam. You can kind of already see a tiny little bit of it there, but I know I'm doing this a little impromptu, but oh well. All right, so you can kind of see the headline there a little bit. Quentin Tarantino names The Social Network the best movie of the 2010s. So this is kind of insane, because now I get to make a twofer. I get to make a twofer recommendation when it comes to acclaimed directors' films and what you should kind of check out, because we are talking about and yes, it's by IGN. It's by IGN. Only because I have the app on my phone and I'm able to check out headlines that way. I almost never really agree with their opinions, but in terms of providing news, that's where I go to. So Quentin Tarantino, Oscar-winning filmmaker and movie buff, Quentin Tarantino has weighed in on what he considers the very best films of the past decade, 2010 to 2019, and didn't pick any of his own. Rightfully so. I gotta be honest, if somebody asked me what's my favorite movie of the 2010s, I would disqualify my own. It's like, why would I do that? It's like, that was terrible, but you get my drift. Instead, Tarantino has selected David Fincher's The Social Network as the best movie of the decade. Now, it's interesting that he went with The Social Network. It doesn't surprise me that he goes for a Fincher film, because David Fincher's definitely another filmmaker that I'll throw out there. He's not an auteur like Nolan is in terms of writing and directing his own material. Fincher almost barely ever has an input on the script, really. Almost every single time he's done a film, he has never inputted on the script. Maybe he's got some story beat changes and some things that maybe he might change on the fly while he's on set, but he's almost never been there from day one when it comes to the construction of the script. He either has another writer, or he has somebody adapt a novel, or he has something that he wants to produce, like he picks up a script, he picks up a book and says, hey, I want to make this, and somebody writes it for him, and then he directs that. But so when we're just looking at director only, you got, of course, David Fincher. I would even throw in Martin Scorsese in there. David Fincher, though, everybody always talks about Scorsese, and a lot of people have been talking about Scorsese as of late, whether it be his comments about the Marvel Cinematic Universe or with the recent release of The Irishman. Fincher, it's actually been a good minute since we've seen a movie from him, mainly because he's been busy with his own little TV show. That sounded a little patronizing. I say little only because of how not little it is, because of how really great and huge it really is, especially on Netflix after getting a second season, and I believe it did get renewed for a third. I'll have to look into that. But his show Mindhunter, for which I've seen the first season of, and it's excellent. Definitely recommend it. If we are gonna go on a tangent here when it comes to television, I recommend Mindhunter is it. My only little nitpick with Mindhunter is that ever so often they do get a little bit into case of the week territory, where they're going after a serial killer per episode, but there's always an ongoing purpose as to why they're checking out every serial killer, in every episode, because there's something much more important behind the scenes. So that's kind of neat. But as far as getting great performances and giving that cinematic quality in terms of the look of the shots and the performances and the storytelling, Mindhunter is it. If you have Netflix, look it up, binge it. I highly recommend it. But going back to David Fincher's Social Network, I'm surprised that Tarantino went with The Social Network as opposed to, to be honest, between 2010 and 2019, I think he's only made 2 films. No. He's made 3 films. Social Network, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I really liked, but I didn't love, and Gone Girl. And Gone Girl, I think, was in my top 10, but The Social Network, I think, was no. I think it was my second or third favorite film of 2010. Yeah. No, it was my second. Number 1 was Inception. Going back to Nolan, I love Inception. Another one I really recommend in case you ever want to, get down to levels, both literally and figuratively, when it comes to deconstructing a script. I've actually read the script for Inception, so I haven't just seen the film a couple of times, but I've also, at my film school, we have a library, and of course the library is filled with books. It's filled with the movies on DVD and Blu-ray. It's even got TV show box sets, and there's even a separate room, a very silent room, really, but a separate room that is filled with scripts. Obviously, you gotta have scripts. If a little quick pro tip: if your film school does not have scripts on campus, get the fuck out. Because that ain't right. 7 out of 10, Toy Story 4 doesn't have Andy's mom. Yeah, no, I was kind of missing Andy's mom. Well, Toy Story 4 didn't even have Andy. Anyways, back to it. Make sure that your film school has scripts for you to read. Because whether you want to be an actor or a producer, everybody needs to know how a script looks like, how it reads, how it tells a story, how it builds an image in your head. Whether you're the costume designer, whether it's all about the script. So you gotta make sure your schools have scripts. If they don't, you're not getting your money's worth. Sign a petition or withdraw from the... I'm sorry. I know that sounds, very, kind of a little bit on the extreme side, but it's true. Get the hell out. If your film school does not have scripts, get out. Because I don't think it's worth your time or your money. Mine thankfully does, a whole room. And while gallivanting through it, I did find the Inception script, and I read it. And it was actually one of the first feature scripts that I read from beginning to end. And I understood it in a way where I'm like, okay, so this is what an actor's gonna see. This is what a producer's gonna see when they're trying to get a feel for the script and for the story, so that when they can finally say, yeah, we're gonna put money behind you, there's a reason for it. You know what I mean? So yeah, going to Inception, that's a good script to read if you're thinking about being a writer and you're very inspired by Nolan's work. Out of all the movies that he's done, as much as I love, Dark Knight and all that stuff, and Interstellar is pretty nice and all that, and Dunkirk was cool. There's something about the way Inception is written when it comes to flashing back and flashing forward, going into one dream that's within another dream, and being able to make sure that you don't get lost in the script pages. That needs to be studied. So off of that, let's get back to the headline in question here. The Social Network. Definitely a very important film. A very topical film. That's a film that talks about... Okay, this might just be considered a hot take, but it's a movie that talks about social media the way All the President's Men talked about the Watergate scandal in during the Nixon time when it was released, because of how topical it was. And, as much as we kind of, hate to give it its form of credit, social media is very much an influence of our lives, whether we like it or not. It's here. There's no way. Trying to get rid of social media is like trying to get rid of the internet. There's no way. There's no way. It's done. It's done. It's out there. Because when you put stuff on social media, it is out there. Regardless of whether or not you deleted it, somebody probably copied it, pasted it, and there you go. And the Social Network is able to tell a great origin story, so to speak, of Lex Luthor. No, I'm kidding, because Jesse Eisenberg. But of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, while at the same time being able to form a commentary as to how what a lot of us find toxic or controversial within social medias like Facebook was being done face to face during the creation of Facebook. Even if it's not as dramatic as both David Fincher and then masterclass screenwriter Aaron Sorkin were able to do in the making of that, or were able to do in making that film. Because obviously some things have to be, because that's another thing that you're probably going to hear, be told in film school, is that when you're adapting a true story, when a movie's based on a true story, based on real events, I think it's almost synonymous now. I think nobody is going to blame you now anymore for now, realizing that this movie that's based on a true story is not 100% accurate to the true story. Because guess what? That movie's trying to be a movie. It's not trying to be a complete retelling of the accurate story that happened in real life. Because if it was, it's going to be boring as fuck. A movie needs to have a protagonist, needs to have an obstacle, and needs to have a goal. You need to be able to work those elements into a real life story, and that's how you get your film. And that's pretty much what Aaron Sorkin was able to really get across with David Fincher's directing. And I cannot whatsoever blame Tarantino for assigning The Social Network as his favorite film of 2010. Let me see, of the 2010s. Let me see if reading in more so in the headline, there's more disclosure as to why he really called it that. Do you know what that means in English? Baseball. Oh my God, snakes! I'm done with you. Tarantino explained his choice to premiere via the playlist. It's The Social Network, hands down. It is number one because it's the best. That's all. It crushes all the competition. All right, Quentin, you're not really giving me anything. I was really hoping for some kind of deconstructive analyzation of why The Social Network was okay. God damn it. Directed by David Fincher from a screenplay by Aaron Sorkin, The Social Network chronicled the founding of Facebook and the rise of controversial tech mogul Mark Zuckerberg, played by Jesse Eisenberg. The film's still cast included Andrew Garfield in his breakout role, which I think personally he was snubbed for an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Justin Timberlake, who was really great in that. Rooney Mara and Armie Hammer playing dual roles and nailing them both. And okay, so he didn't explain himself as well as I was hoping he would in this article or in his interview here with who was it? Premiere via the playlist. But then Tarantino went on to say Tarantino's number 2 film of the decade is Christopher Nolan's 2017 war film Dunkirk. I think at one point he kept going how much he loved Dunkirk. Biothrust, heyo to you, sir. I may leave soon or not, but here, thank you for the 3 bits. Really appreciate Biothrust, and really cute small wave there by Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, where we might be in due for a sequel there on Captain Toad. Thank you for the trinity of bits there, Biothrust. Really appreciate it. All right. Keep the stream going. And anybody else who's watching right now, you too can be an avid supporter of Film Student School and all other streams done here on the Dark Spider David channel. Not by doing the bits like Biothrust did, although that would be very, very special and very, very appreciative. But otherwise, all you have to do is just keep on watching, hit the follow button, turn on notifications, and that's how you show your support. Let's see. But anyways, let's read on to what Tarantino's had to say about Dunkirk here, which is another really good film. But if I had to choose any of Nolan's, it would be, like I said, Inception. For Fincher, if we're looking at the past 10 years, then Social Network. If we're looking at his entire filmography, Fight Club. Fight Club is so contemporary. It's so well done in terms of, again, going back to deconstruction, going back to the film and being like, oh, there's little references and things like that made early in the film to things that happen later in the film that's never get old rewatching over and over. Tarantino explained at the time that it took him 3 viewings to fully appreciate Dunkirk beyond the technical level, and as a result, the film rose from 7th to 2nd place on his personal list of the best films of the decade. I liked the movie, but the spectacle almost numbed me to the experience. I don't think I felt anything emotional. I was awed by it, but I didn't know what I was awed by, Tarantino told The Ringer's Rewatchables podcast. It wasn't until the 3rd time that I could see past the spectacle and into the film the story is about. I finally could see through the trees a little bit. Both The Social Network and Dunkirk made IGN's list of the best movies of the decade. We held The Social Network. Okay, going on to IGN. Okay, let's see what IGN says best movies of the decade. Just out of curiosity, I don't think I'm really going to agree with this list per se, but I think this could be used as a little bit of inspiration for what to check out here in the future. Black Swan's good. Okay, I wouldn't really. I saw The Devil. There's an awful lot of good Korean cinema out there, and I think we were shown with that even further. So they made a splash. There's been so many great films already. I mean, I think my exposure to Korean cinema, and you know what? I'm gonna make this a recommendation for film lovers. This might not speak to you from a genre standpoint. You might not even love the movie when you get finished watching it because of how fucked up it kind of is, but it's still a recommendation that I say go out there and check it out, only because of how it's able to give you that gut punch of a reaction towards the end and make you think why it is that you felt that gut punch and how was it that they were able to do it so well. And it's called Old Boy. That was my exposure to Korean cinema, where I looked at it and went, and I was very naive. This was back in like 2011 or so, where at the time I wasn't so over the moon with foreign films because I was like, I would come up with a stupid excuse and say I have to look up, I have to look down, I have to look up, the subtitles, look down. I completely cut that out of my vernacular, saying no, that's no longer an excuse. Because once I saw Old Boy, I think it was in 2011 or so, that was, out of all people, recommended to me by someone who's not a big movie person, one of my friends. She was like, you got to check out this movie, Old Boy. And I'm like, oh, okay. And finally one day I think I was bored enough to actually, load up the movie on my computer and watch it. And yeah, I was so glad that I went in there fresh, and Old Boy is that shit. So check that out. There is a remake out there by Spike Lee starring Josh Brolin. No. I'm sorry, but no. No. Do not get it twisted. Check out the original from 2003, 2004. So early 2000s, we're kind of speaking outside of the past decade. But the original Old Boy, yes, it's a Korean film. It's subtitled, but trust me, there's something authentic about the elements of that movie that just works so well to, again, take, sweep, pull the carpet out from beneath your feet and make you fall back and go, shit. So, going back to Korean cinema, I have not seen this film. I saw The Devil, but I did hear, bam, there we go, Inception. We already talked about that. We'll go ahead and move forward. This movie I like a lot. I'm not going to say that it's a movie to really analyze, but it's a really good movie to study from the perspective, like, if you want to make fun movies that still have some kind of soul or substance to, that are not just, spectacle, but they're all about taking a genre that you're really passionate about and making just a really all-around good movie out of. Kick-Ass. And how to adopt a comic book well. Social Network, of course. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Actually, let's look back at genre movies with Edgar Wright's filmography. Shaun of the Dead. That's a movie that I'll recommend. Because if you want to make movies that are outside of your typical drama, that are outside of your typical just one-note genre, and be able to take two genres and fuse it together because you're just feeling that creative and inspired, look at Shaun of the Dead. Starts out as a romantic film because I often forget how romantic based the first 20 or so minutes of Shaun of the Dead is. Like, there's barely any reference to the stuff that's going to happen later, referring to the dead part of the title. But it starts off as that one thing, and just like with an awful lot of great stories, it turns into another, but it never, breaks your neck as far as making that switch over to that other genre, because it still keeps the heart of the film, which is that romantic part. And that's why Shaun of the Dead just so works. And Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Edgar Wright are just a trinity made in heaven. And I hope that they make more movies together. I know that their goal was to just make that trilogy, but Shaun of the Dead, I've seen it now, I think about 3 or 4 times ever in my lifetime. Movie I can definitely recommend, especially if you're a fan of zombies, if you're a fan of the horror genre, while at the same time also having that soft side of that we all need to have for comedies and romances and stuff like that. And meld them all together. Shaun of the Dead, definitely check it out. I would probably put that over Scott Pilgrim, even though I love Scott Pilgrim. if I was to look at all of Edgar Wright's films, I would say Shaun of the Dead. Have you seen the Fred movies? All right, Snakes, I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that. Toy Story 3, yes, definitely. If we're looking at 2010, Bridesmaids, I liked, but I didn't love. Chronicle was pretty good too. If you're, feeling something for, found footage movies, but you want to kind of take a different approach to it, Chronicle was a good example of that. Drive, I liked a lot, yeah. Okay. Again, if we're, okay. I don't know what to say about that. Looper, I liked Looper. There were some things that I think were a little fetchy, if that makes sense, in Looper, but otherwise, all right. If we're looking at, like I said, the 2010s, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Okay. Ever so often, again, opinions are different, subjective. Everyone's gonna have a different one. This is, if you were to ask me what movies I have seen, but I really wouldn't recommend, that are against the grain or against the type that you would probably expect me to say, it's almost all of recent Terrence Malick movies. Because, no, that's almost a whole nother topic for another video. First Class, yes, really like First Class. And I guess I can use this, and Cabin in the Woods. If you are a writer, director, or producer that's very interested in films where you really want to trip up your audience by changing the dynamic of a genre, not taking two genres and fusing it together like Shaun of the Dead is, but sticking with a genre, but then just kind of taking it and pulling it from the inside out, Cabin in the Woods. I love Cabin in the Woods. That's a movie that I recommend. Thank you, Biothrust, for the host, by the way. Thank you so much. But Cabin in the Woods is legitimate. I really love this movie. Definitely check this out if you're a horror fan, but you're tired of the traditional archetype horror film. Check out Cabin in the Woods if you haven't already done so. Django Unchained. Yeah, again, going back to that Tarantino filmography, can't really talk about it too much. Dread, I liked a lot. The Master, I acquired taste. Raid, really good action film. Skyfall, one of the better, more refined James Bond films. Zero Dark 30, I would put Hurt Locker over Zero Dark 30, only because Hurt Locker came out in, I believe, 2009, so that's why it's outside of the decade here. 12 Years to Slave, good movie, really good movie. Have not seen Blue is the Warmest Color, but I see an awful lot of good shots from it, so I've yet to check that out. Oh, there's Frozen. Fruitvale Station, more topical than ever. I know it's a sensitive matter right now, like literally right now, but definitely, no mistake, and definitely an important film. In fact, I almost feel like I need to give this a second watch, because I remember this was one of the movies that I was trying to knock out by the end of the year, to be like, because everybody was talking about it so much, and I'm like, I gotta watch this. Yes, it's in my top 10, but I'm like, let's slow down with it. Let's check it out. Because this is from Black Panther director Ryan Coogler with Michael B. Jordan. And I believe that this is a, directing debut. This is his first film. I think we need to go back and reanalyze what made that movie work so well. Gravity, really liked it a lot. That's another thing, too, is that let's look at movies that have the whole tracking shot thing. We had 1917 last year. We had Gravity with Alfonso Cuarón. We had, going back to... another Mexican director, apparently Mexicans are in when it comes to winning those Best Director Oscars. So my shots are good. But going back to 2015, when we had the Oscars, and Alejandro González Iñárritu won for Birdman, doing the whole tracking shot thing. But I really adore Birdman, and I think the reason why is because, yes, it has the whole tracking shot that I'm a sucker for, the whole tracking shot method to the way it's filmed, but I also think it's because of it kind of touches a little bit on the movie industry and the theater industry, and serving as a commentary on it, but it's also like this descent into madness, so to speak, by saying, even though it's a tracking shot, it's kind of revolving around the same location. Every so often we go into the streets of New York, so there's a little bit of trickery there, and I wonder if it's even in this list. Is this really 100 movies? Oh, Prisoners was good. Prisoners. Yes. Denis Villeneuve. That's another. You know what? I gotta close this. There's way too many. I'm gonna be here forever if I do this. But some a filmmaker to look out for. Not just for directing and for writing, but also for cinematography. Because I feel like this director. Okay, Biothrust. I'll be right back. This director, I think, has a good way to talk to cinematographers because almost every one of his movies looks really good, whether it be with him working with Roger Deakins or Hoyte van Hoytema, or I'm trying to remember who else he's worked with cinematography-wise and sound directing-wise, because his movies always have those elements that work really well. Denis Villeneuve, I might be butchering his last name. He's a French-Canadian director. He did Blade Runner 2049. He did Arrival. He did Prisoners, as you saw right there really quick before I switched over to this other screen. He did Sicario. He works very fast, but again, it looks like he's able to talk to actors really well to get amazing performances, almost Oscar-worthy performances. Prisoners was heart-wrenching. It's funny because I'm not a parent, and it almost made me want to go outside and make sure that my kid is okay. And I'm like, I don't even have a kid, and Prisoners paranoid me, saying, I don't think I want one, only because I don't want that. I don't wish that terror on anybody. So, but again, going to kind of broadening his, filmography and his, the way he's able to speak to genres. You got Sicario with this, action thriller type vibe, and then science fiction with Blade Runner and Arrival, and the upcoming Dune, which I'm really stoked for. And that's definitely I think a director they need to keep out for, whether it be from a directing standpoint, but also on the more technical side, cinematography, sound, costume design. It looks like he knows how to talk there. And going back to those, Zero Dark 30 and Catherine Bigelow with Zero Dark 30 and with The Hurt Locker, even check out Near Dark. I wasn't over the moon with Near Dark, but there were elements about that movie that I really respected when it comes to tackling, again, another genre, which is the classic vampire film. Us Mexicans know we can make good movies. It seems like it. IGN likes Frozen. The fuck? Everybody loves Frozen. Everybody loves Frozen. It's here to stay, buddy. Get used to it, because I'm pretty certain we're going to get a Frozen 3. We're going to get a Frozen 3. And I do like the first Frozen. I have not seen Frozen 2, but I do like the first Frozen. It's like that song that is good, but the radio just plays it like ad nauseum, that you're like, I'm done. It's not a bad song, and in this case, it's not a bad movie, but I'm like, come on. So, we used IGN's little list there to kind of, touch base onto movies that you should check out from the 2010s, if we're trying to stay a little bit relevant. Going back to the 2000s, I would go as far as to even recommend the Lord of the Rings trilogy if you're into creating a trilogy and seeing how a trilogy can working from one film to the next, and making sure that you realize how to make that second film work with the first film or work better than the first film. If you want, another kind of example of that, then definitely look at Dark Knight versus Batman Begins, also from Christopher Nolan. Going into the 80s and the 90s, I mean, there's so much to pull there that, to be honest, I think I might make a part 2 to this episode. Not next week, but maybe like in a couple of weeks. That way I can maybe create a Excel sheet. I just wanted to, pull things out of my head here to just kind of spitball movies and just kind of take shots in the dark and play this a little impromptu, just to kind of get the juices flowing and look at movies and be like, oh, I've yet to watch that. Which kind of leads me to my next point. I actually have a handful of 4K movies over here, of things that I need to watch. And some of them are very important films. Saving Private Ryan. I have not seen that movie. I also know how to host. Snake Sabers, did you host? I thought you did. Okay, that one. What I was gonna say. Saving Private Ryan. I've seen the famous Omaha Beach scene in its entirety. I haven't actually seen the entire film in its entirety, and I'm hoping that one of these days I can correct that, because I have it in 4K over there. Along with Casino. I've never seen Casino. I've seen scenes of Casino from Martin Scorsese. but I haven't seen it in its entirety. But every time I watch it, I can't shake the feeling that I'm actually prefer this over Goodfellas. But we'll find out. And the tough thing sometimes is, of course, finding the actual time to watch these movies, especially since some of these movies are actually 3 hours long. So those two movies that I just mentioned are about 3 hours long, so I have to make really good time with them. Block a moment out of my schedule to be able to check these movies out. So Casino, I have yet to check that out, but I have that over there. The third John Wick film, even though I've seen the first two already, and those are some really good action movies. If you really want to study cohesive, like how to do action well, definitely check out at least the first two John Wick movies. I can't speak for the third one because I haven't seen it. But I got that over there. I have yet to check that out. Again, Saving Private Ryan, Casino, right over there. Unforgiven is a movie that is actually I've been wanting to check out recently, where I'm like, I'm gonna watch it tonight. And every time I have to do something school related, I have to do an assignment, or I have to, I have to keep my schedule consistent and stream, or I have to get something else out of the way, and I don't do it. Or there's other shows that I'm also, keeping track of. So hopefully I can fix that this coming weekend, maybe on Sunday-ish or so, since I have Monday off. I don't have to go to bed early or nothing. Who knows? We'll see. But that's another movie that's also on my backlog of films to check out. And then I even have a section of movies that I have seen, but it's literally been almost decades since I've seen them. So they're almost going to be like brand new experiences to me. So I do have Forrest Gump over there, Best Picture and Best Director winner. Schindler's List, going back to another Spielberg piece. I got Schindler's List over there. That's another movie that I got to check out and make sure that I know how it works. That I know, like I said, I've seen, but I saw it literally in school. I think it was actually in middle school, which I have no fucking clue why they were showing. Well, pertaining to history, but at the same time, you're showing this really realistic depiction of the Holocaust that's rated R to middle school kids. I mean, I remember they had us sign the permission slip and all that stuff, and my mom gave the go-ahead. I can faintly remember scenes from that movie. So I'm going to have to go back and check it out. So it's going to be almost like a brand new experience for me. So that's one movie, and yeah, like I said, I got plenty of other 4Ks to kind of go through. But like I said, I was just kind of trying to, I got the original Jurassic Park. So yes, several different films that I have yet to watch, several films that I have seen. It's very tough to kind of keep track of them. So I will be certain to make things just a little bit more organized. I understand and I recognize that this topic probably needed a little bit more organization, a little bit more professionalism when it comes to keeping track of a list, and I apologize for that. But at the same time, I'm also kind of glad that I did this just a little bit off the cuff, only because whatever came to my brain, I would say, not every single film, and not just these films, not just limited to the films that I mentioned in terms of what I have seen. I don't think it's exclusive to just what I talked about in this podcast, or at least in this show, in this episode. But I almost want to believe that whatever I said, whatever titles I recommended in this episode are definitely the ones that came to my brain first, and they probably came to my brain first without scripting, without bullet pointing, for a reason. And that's probably, I think, almost a testament in and of itself that says those are probably some movies to check out. That I didn't have to write them down. I didn't have to, jot down and say. And also filmmakers. Again, Catherine Bigelow, Richard Donner, Edgar Wright, Christopher Nolan, etc., etc. Definitely check all of them out, because if I mention them on this first, like I said, spontaneous, off the cuff, recommendations list of movies to check out as a director or as a writer, as an auteur, or even as a producer, as far as what makes the greatest stories, that probably means something. But stay tuned, because this topic will be to be continued in another episode. So Snicks, do not worry. You say soon you may go. I'm actually going to be signing off right now, because I'm on the verge of losing my voice, because I have to do an awful lot of talking at work today. And now, after rambling for a little over an hour or so, I think it's about time that I sign it off. Aside from that, though, I'd say that I mentioned a good essential viewings. Going back to TV shows, of course, people are probably sick of hearing about Breaking Bad, but I did mention Mindhunter. Definitely check that out. What's another show? I mean, as far as what I'm watching right now, I'm watching Agents of Shield to for my comic book TV show watching viewing. I'm checking out Cobra Kai only because I heard that's pretty decent, which I would probably say it is, except for some glaring flaws that I'll probably disclose in a tweet, which you can definitely keep track of over on my Twitter by hitting me up on twitter.com/DarkSpiderDavid. Snick Sabers, one of my moderators, went ahead and posted the links over here in the chat. So if you're currently watching right now, you want to follow me on Twitter, click the link and that'll take you to it. Otherwise, if you're watching this either on YouTube as a repeat video or as a past broadcast over on my Twitch channel, make sure you check out either the info page or the about page or the bio page, whether it be on YouTube or on Twitch. And that'll give you guys the links for my Instagram and my Twitter at DarkSpiderDavid, all one word, no caps. And also make sure to check out the Twitch channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, I Twitch. Every so often when I haven't had enough food, I Twitch. Check out my Twitch channel every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays for sure. And every so often, I might stream on the occasional Friday or Saturday if I'm feeling up for it on my Twitch channel. Check it out. Follow if you like some of the past broadcasts. Check them out. If you like what you see, show your support by hitting the follow button, turning on notifications, and keeping the spirit alive. Otherwise, that does it for me on tonight's episode of Film Student School, episode 6. But again, let it be clear that this topic is for sure probably going to be repeated in a handful of episodes. I'm definitely going to title it like part 2, part 3, as all prestigious filmmakers do with the Back to the Future series. Oh my god, I gotta talk about Back to the Future. Yes, definitely will be continued in a much more bullet pointed and organized format. I promise you. Otherwise, that does it for me. Take care, guys. Have a great evening. Stay humble. And I'll see you guys on the next episode of Film Student School. Good night.